to start by welcoming Todd McKenney to noise11.com. And, well, I've lost count of the number of shows I've seen you in, Todd, over the years.
Yes, I've lost count of the number I've done, actually. Well, I started I started doing shows in 1983. So I've been treading the boards for quite a long time now. And, you know, I keep waiting for the phone to stop ringing, but I'm very grateful that it keeps ringing. And so I'm still, my jazz hands and spirit fingers, or whatever they call them, are still intact.
They say you always remember your first. Do you remember your first stage show?
Yes, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was 21st of June, 1983. And it was an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical called Song and Dance, which is one of his lesser known musicals. And it was at the Adelaide Festival Centre. I turned up at the Adelaide Festival Centre and, you know, met a lot of people who are still my friends today on that day, and really never looked back. We toured for a year, and I ended up then, because I came from Perth, and so I ended up basing myself in Sydney after that show, and things sort of just progressed from there. In that show, I was the acrobatic role, because I studied acrobatics when I was a kid. So I was tumbling all over the place. And so my probably first decade of my professional life was because I could backflip all over the place. That's how I got my work. And I don't do so much of that anymore. I don't do any of that anymore. But yeah, that's kind of what got me started, because I had that skill under my belt. And so I still dance around a lot, but I don't do as much dancing as I used to.
I get the impression that the theatre world is a very small community. We see a lot of people in a lot of shows over the years, as we've seen your name pop up in many shows over the years. Is it like that, where you get to know everybody and they become your close friends?
Yes, absolutely. And it's, I think for a few reasons, our careers always just sort of go like that. You end up, you know, you meet new people, then you come back together with the old ones, and then you just, you know, you sort of just do that throughout your whole career. But I think because when you do a musical, you're thrust together in a very intense period to start with. Like, a rehearsal period is very intense, because people have come from all over Australia, and a lot of people, you know, don't know everybody in the show, and so you sort of become a tight-knit family very quickly. And then you tour for as long as the show is touring, and you're all living in the same apartment building or the same hotel block or whatever, and then the show finishes and you all just, you know, split and go your separate ways again. But during that time, because you're often out of your own state, you tend to bond with each other, and they become your family. And so that feels the same, or feels the same today in a show as that did in 1983. Everyone's just welcomes each other with hugs and kisses and hello darlings, and gets on with the show. And then when you see them again, it's like you never left. So it's very much a family feel.
Well, the show that's coming up, and by the way, welcome back to the show, the stage after 2020, 2021. You finally get back on stage, which is fantastic stuff. Todd McKenney sings Peter Allen and lots more. So before we concentrate on the Peter Allen part of that show, let's talk about the lots more. And one of those lots more is Liza Minnelli, which is kind of connected to Peter Allen anyway.
Well, most of the lots more of this show is actually in some loose way connected to Peter Allen, because Liza Minnelli, obviously, you know, he famously married when, you know, he was young and in his heady days of, you know, hitting New York and meeting Liza and Judy and all of that. So there is the Liza Minnelli connection, but there's also we're celebrating Bette Midler in this show as well, and Bette Midler and Peter Allen actually started their careers in the States, in New York, at the Continental Barb House in New York on the same day, and they used to share the stage in that venue, and became great mates right through until his death. And so that's a nice little tie-in. Well, and Bette Midler is one of my all-time favourite performers. If I, you know, on a rainy Sunday afternoon in Sydney, very, very often I'll go down the YouTube rabbit hole and look at Bette Midler concerts from all over the place. I just love her to bits. I love her sense of humour. I love her voice. I love her style of performing. And so for a long time, I didn't sing any of her stuff or any female stuff because I thought, well, I'm a man, I can't do that. But I actually think there's something really great about a man singing a song made famous by females and vice versa. So we do a couple of Bette songs. We're also going to do some Barry Manilow. And again, Barry Manilow was Bette Midler's musical director for many years. And because Barry Manilow did the song Copacabana and Peter did Rio, quite often they got confused for each other, and they were both flamboyant performers. And so I've got a few stories that Peter used to say in his shows about being confused with Barry Manilow. So we thought, well, let's do some Barry Manilow as well. So there's a Peter Allen connection there, and it's just fun stuff to sing. So.
I am disappointed you're doing a Bette Midler song. I would have much preferred you to be doing the Bette Midler Sophie Tucker jokes.
Oh, well, just try and stop me. I mean, I would love to do that as well, and I might even like the style of my shows, and the point of this show actually is to sing songs that I love. And when you talk about the reason, for instance, if I introduce the Bette Midler portion of our show, I'll tell the audience the reasons why, and so that might include some of the Sophie Tucker jokes, which I think people are always up for hearing because they're a bit naughty, but they've become so iconic these days that I think I could get away with it. So the show does lend itself to being able to dip my toe into the Sophie Tucker world.
Yeah. I see Prince, Tom Jones, even John Paul Young are name-checked as songs that potentially could be in this show. Will they be in that show still?
Yes, potentially, because I did Strictly Ballroom, the movie, back in 1992, and so "Love Is in the Air" is a great song. My audiences love it. So sometimes we do that right at the front of the show because I like the sentiment that "Love Is in the Air" kind of portrays as well. It puts everybody in a good mood. It gives them a song that they instantly know straight away. I tell a couple of gags about doing the Fruity Rumba with Sonia Kruger as my partner in that movie, and then launch ourselves into "Lovers in the Air," and then that segues into a song which is actually the first single I ever bought when I was a kid, which is a Kelly Marie song called "Feels Like I'm in Love," like a pure disco song. So that kind of gives you an idea of the flavour. Everything in the show is not just a random song that I think, oh, that's a nice song, I'll put it in. It's all got something to do with my musical and theatrical upbringing. There's a reason for every song in the show. And so "Love Is in the Air" is obvious because of my, sorry, I'm just getting a message, because of my association with Strictly Ballroom, and then Kelly Marie, the first song. And so it's kind of a very personal show.
Kelly Marie, "Feels Like I'm in Love." I remember playing that as a new release on radio back in the day. Funnily enough, she never had a greatest hits.
Well, I think that was her greatest hit. So if you want to get an hour of listening out of that track, you've got to play it really slowly.
I'm sure there was an extended dance mix that probably went for about an hour back in the day.
I'm sure there was.
Peter Allen, I mean, you've pretty much been Peter Allen as long as Peter Allen was Peter Allen these days.
Well, I'm older than Peter Allen. Peter Allen passed away when he was 48, and I'm 55 now. So, his music fits me like a glove, and I loved my time in The Boy from Oz, and I still love singing his songs. And each time I do a new version of this show, I do all the hits, the Peter Allen hits that people love, like Tenterfield Sadler and "I Still Call Australia Home" and "I Honestly Love You," "Don't Cry Out Loud." But I always try and include a lesser known song of his that people don't know. And quite often at the end of those songs, they get some of the biggest reactions of the night, because I think it reminds people that he was an amazing songwriter, and not just for those big hits. I mean, throughout his life, he recorded 252 songs for him, for other people, and they became hits. Well, "I Honestly Love You" became a hit for Olivia Newton-John, and so I like to remind people that he did these other brilliant songs as well. And hopefully at the end of the night, it'll propel people to go and re-explore Peter Allen and go back to some of the earlier albums and listen to some of the lesser known stuff. His arrangements are amazing. The lyrics are amazing. And yeah, and so I like kind of re-educating people about his music.
I was recently surprised to find out that Frank Sinatra recorded one of his songs, You and Me, We Wanted It All, and Peter actually opened for Sinatra in Queensland, in Sanctuary Cove in 1989, I think it might have been.
Yeah, he did. And Peter Allen he wrote that song, and it wasn't called it wasn't called We Wanted It All. It was called something else. And so he went to had the meeting with Frank Sinatra, and Frank Sinatra said, I want to call it You and Me, We Wanted It All. And Peter said, who was I to argue with Frank Sinatra? If he wants to record the song, he could call it, zippity doodah. He wanted, you can call it whatever you like. And the other one too. Do you remember Once Before I Go, that big ballad of his that he sang? He wrote this song, which I think I might close my show with. I've never done it before in a live show, but he wrote this song. His friend Anne Margaret was a great mate of his, and she was doing a show in Las Vegas. And she rang Peter up and said, I need a closing number. Could you maybe try writing me something? And he wrote this song called Once Before I Go, which is an incredible song. It's all about once before I go. I could assure you I would do it all again. I wouldn't change anything about my life, and I'm doing it all for you, and I'm doing it just this once before I go. It's a great sentiment. And so I think I'm going to close my show with it. And she had a massive hit with it. And so there's all these little sort of nuances that people learn about him during my shows.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Allen sort of falls into two categories. There's people who are fans of Peter Allen, the recording artist and performer, but there's also fans of the songwriting. And that songwriting goes very, very deep, doesn't it?
Very, very deep. And actually, when he first started writing and tried to sort of peddle his songs to the record companies, a lot of them didn't want him because they were kind of dark and deep and almost somber, but they're always really heartfelt. And that's the reason people love his songs, And when you watch Peter Allen perform, you've got this, flamboyant Rio party boy side of him, but when he just sits down and plays really simple chords on the piano and sings something as simple as I love you, I honestly love you, people just melted, And even to this day, for me personally, out of all the songs that I sing of Peter Allen's, and I would have sung Tenterfield Sadler thousands of times, the last 20 odd years, probably 3,000, maybe more. And 1,000 of those times were during The Boy from Oz. But I've done it at footy finals. I've done it on Australia Day concerts. I've done it, everywhere. But when the first chords of Tenterfield Sadler play, the audience just spontaneously burst into applause because they love the song. They're very familiar with that chord. And somehow along the last, couple of decades, I've kind of become synonymous with that. And so there is this kind of blurred line which for a minute, if I wanted to really kid myself, I feel proud. I feel proud of that song. I feel like, of course that I didn't write it, but I feel like, and because of my friendship with his family too, I feel like it's an honor to be able to keep that song and keep Peter Allen's music alive. And it's all wrapped up in that song, which I sing at the end of my shows. And often, because of the audience's reaction, I sing that song sitting in the middle of the audience. So I'll take my stool down to the middle of the crowd. And so people have to move their chairs. And so everyone kind of ends up facing in. And I sit amongst the audience and sing it. And it's a really beautiful way to connect to the audience. And I think that's something Peter would have done as well.
And a great place to do that at Crown, because by that stage in the audience, everybody's got a quarter of a bottle full of wine still, and you can get yourself a free drink.
Yeah, that is the other reason. Thank you for letting that cat out of the bag. But no, that's the reason I like working at the Palms at Crown. It's because people are relaxed and they have had a beverage, and the key to enjoying my show is to have a few wines before we start.
I think it's about time somebody
And all
wrote
the way
Todd
through.
McKenney the musical. Like that.
God.
That would be a very interesting show, wouldn't it?
Well, it'd have ups and downs. It'd have there'd be colour. There'd be colour, of course, yeah. But I don't think it'll ever happen. But not a bad idea. I might write it myself. I'll star in it myself. I'll play myself.
It's going to be great to see the
True.
show because we're going to know every song. That's going to be every song except the occasional obscure.
Oh, you'll know. That's the whole point. I want people to welcome themselves back to the theatre and feel very comfortable and not feel like the show is risky anyway. But with my shows, I always try to create like a dinner party feel. I want there to be a free-flowing conversation between the audience and myself. We'll take care of the music side of it, but the chat and the connection I have with the audience is as important to me as the songs. And we never do the same show twice. We never talk about exactly the same things in a show twice. We always just sort of let it roll. It has a shape to it, my shows, but the chat is often random, and often that becomes from audience members calling out a question or asking me something or letting me know, or scoring me. They bring score paddles these days, and like a la Dancing with the Stars, and so often I get people holding up numbers and things, and so I kind of embrace that. And I've got Michael Pope joining me at the Palms at Crown. Do you know Michael?
Oh, he could do the Sophie Tucker jokes.
He could do the Sophie Tucker jokes. So I met Michael. So Michael Pope, for anyone that's watched the live telecast of a lot of television shows in Melbourne, Australia's best TV warm-up guy is a guy called Michael Pope. He has a wicked sense of humour, and he's been warming up the audiences at Dancing with the Stars since 2004, and he and I have become great mates. So in the commercial breaks, to keep the audience alive, he basically just takes the piss, for want of a better word, about me and predominantly Helen Ritchie, the judge that sits next to me on Dancing with the Stars. So when he starts walking over towards us in those commercial breaks, we basically shudder. We're like, what's he going to say? And as he was doing it, when I was putting this show for Palms together, I thought, why doesn't he do this for a live show? And so Michael, who is razor sharp with his wit, is going to be amongst the audience when they come into the room. He's going to welcome everybody. He's going to ask people to write down any questions they might have for me. He's going to run a Todd McKenney quiz with the audience as they're all ordering their drinks and settling in to watch the show. So that'll all happen for about half an hour before I come out. And so by the time I come out, the crowd will be severely entertained already with Michael Pope's wit. And then halfway through the show, Michael's going to come back out and he's going to ask me and interview me with the questions that he's gathered from the audience before the show started. So it's random. I have no idea where, how safe that will be, but it's certainly going to provide something sort of unique, I think.
That sounds like something that's going to be very heavily edited if it's ever going to television.
Absolutely.
Todd, great to catch
All the
up with
questions
you.
will be
Looking forward to seeing the show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, thanks. And I encourage people to come along. It's time we got back into the theatre, and this will be just a couple of hours of really great fun with some, with some really great music.